Hey, friends, and welcome to the channel. This is Ken Smith, and today we are at the Welcome Center to the Henry Ford. Now, this museum is absolutely fantastic. It is a must-see if you're here in Dearborn, Michigan. Once we get past the initial Welcome Center visitors that are there and you purchase your ticket to enter, you're going to start walking down a series of hallways, and you're going to be greeted with signs just like this where they say, "What if?" And they kind of give you the little bit of a scenario as to what happened or what would have happened had Henry Ford not pursued his dream to create, the automobile. What would happen if Thomas Edison didn't create the light bulb? And there's a lot of these what ifs that are really great to visit and look at and read and just kind of ponder as you are getting ready to actually enter the museum. Now, one of the things that I want to mention up front is that I literally had to run through this museum in order to just create enough content and visit things. I only had literally a few hours to visit this museum, so I didn't give it the fair visit that I really should have. That being said, you really need to allow yourself a day at least to visit this museum and Greenfield Village. Now, once you walk down the hallway, you are greeted with this absolutely gorgeous DC-3 that's hanging from the ceiling. This area also serves as a hub, and so there's all different directions that you can head in. I chose to visit the Liberty and Justice for All section because I was very curious to see one very specific thing in this section. Much to my surprise, as I walk down the hall, you can see on the left-hand side the history of our country. We walk into this room here, and we start to see where we created the Declaration of Independence. We walk into this room here, and we kind of see a storyboard of what George Washington was doing during the birth and the Revolutionary War of our country. And that display there was actually George Washington's bed that he slept in when he was a general. Now, as we walk down this hall, we start to see the tears of our country during the Civil War. And it's very informative as you continue on down. There's lots of displays that you can see that are hanging on the wall that are really worthy to stop and read and actually learn the history of our country. I've always been a big fan of Abraham Lincoln, and I really wanted to see this next display. As crazy as it sounds, you are actually looking at the rocking chair that Lincoln was sitting in on the night of his assassination. Now, I couldn't find any information as to exactly how the museum acquired this piece, but I would be interested to know how. And if you know how, throw something down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Now, this next display, which might seem somewhat controversial, I'm actually glad the museum had it because it is important to know our history and to learn from our history. And the Civil War was a very dark time, but so were the 1950s and 1960s. And several people, while it being a dark time, really were a light for our country. And a lot of the things that we have today in our country, we can thank those who were willing to take a stand when they needed to stand, or like Rosa Parks, stay seated and stay calm when they needed to be seated and calm. Now, as you're looking at the Rosa Parks bus, I actually did a video on that. I'll throw a link down in the description. But from this point on, we're going to kind of go live into the museum, and you'll hear all the sounds and the ambiances as I narrate through the museum. Well, I did this earlier video on on floorboards. I won't even open up that can of worms, but anyhow, this is still a very cool display. 1923 touring car.
I can only imagine what the Highland Park plant was really like. But just look at some of the machinery here, and stamping, and lathe work, and milling. And wow, just really, really very, very cool. All right, so check it out. It says how to build a Model T, and number 13 is missing. And just to have a little bit of fun, number 13 should be how to use these for floorboards. Okay, I'm gonna let it go. But I just couldn't help myself. How ironic that I do a video earlier this month and bam, 2 rows of crates. But okay, I'll leave it alone now. Anyhow, brick making machine and some other really, really cool stuff. And again, I really am just scratching the surface here. Oh, I just noticed this. Check that out. That is like a conveyor belt kind of moving around. Looks like it's got fenders up there, which is really, really cool. I wonder if it goes around this whole display, but I just noticed that. That is so, so cool. Now, if you remember from last year's video, there were actually folks that were riding those bikes at Old Car Festival, which was, again, really fun to see. People dressed up in period clothing. A fabric machine. More lace, more milling machines. Again, just so much here. Being a lumber guy, modeling ON30 sawmills and stuff like that, this is very cool to see. All right, so this is actually for my wife. My wife is a wonderful violinist, played in several orchestras, but I think she's going to be a little jealous because I'm kind of thinking, knowing Henry Ford, there's going to be, yep, this is a Stradivarius right there on the left. Then another Stradivarius. Wow. I'm closer to a Stradivarius than my wife may have even been. These, I can only imagine what they must sound like. I had no idea that Henry Ford even played the violin, so a little piece of history that I just learned. I think I really got lucky because there's hardly anybody here today, and that I really find unusual. I would think this place would be super, super busy, but of course there's so much to see here. For my YouTube friends who are tractor enthusiasts, yeah, you need to see these. Oh my goodness. (1914) Alley. Got to have a little green in that tractor collection. (1941) John Deere Model B tractor. Loving this Ford tractor. That's pretty cool. Almost looks like it's got pedals similar to the Model T. And over here we got a Fordson. This, according to the sign, says 1917, 1918. According to the sign, this is a Caterpillar Model T, or Model 10, sorry. Caterpillar Model 10 tractor, 1929. This is probably the oldest international harvester truck I have ever seen. This is a 1912 international harvester truck. You can see the bed right back there. Notice the gas lanterns. Yep. Wow, that's just so cool. That thing is just massive. Now this is what caught my eye right there. And for my railroad friends, I'm thinking RGS number 20. I'm kind of guessing that's the same manufacturer. Way cool. Way cool. So here's a cutaway view of this Fordson tractor, which I thought was pretty fascinating. Check out the radiator, as well as the wheels. You can see the inner and outer wheel bearings, the spindle. You can see the cutaway views of the tie rods, kingpins. Looks like there's a cutaway for air, fuel, the engine. Let's get over to the other side. Yeah, here's the drive axle, transmission right there, power plant. You can see the piston, cylinder walls. How cool would it be to see a steam locomotive that's cut away like that? I think it'd be pretty fascinating. So this is a four-sided walk-around display. We're going to walk around it. This is it's just a kitchen display, and this is from the late 1700s. So around the time of, you know, George Washington, Betsy Ross era. And you're going to enjoy this. It goes from the 1870s to the 1930s, and you can just see how things evolved over just a little bit of time. So this kitchen is from the 1840s. So this would have been perhaps at the time that Lincoln was living in Illinois. I mean, it's totally doable. You can kind of get a feel for how things progress over time. Kitchen set from the 1890s. Kind of makes me think of maybe a Little House on the Prairie. These displays are just really phenomenal. So here's I'm going to stand back so you can kind of take it in. Here's a kitchen set. The moment I saw this, it says early 1930s, okay? I'd love to hear what you think, but the moment I saw this, I really thought of the Honeymooners and just their old apartment and whatnot. It just so reminded me of that. Well, this certainly fits my love of aviation, and that is way cool. This display says it's the Model T of the sky. Well, I'm not sure I'd want to get into a Model T that's flying, but it's still cool nonetheless. A little interactive display. Oh, check this out. Is that cool or what? So I'm kind of guessing that I am in a DC-3. And that, I'm kind of guessing that's about right. I was in a C-47, and that looks like about the right width. Way cool. Alright, here's the tri-motor display. Yeah. These displays are really phenomenal. You want to get an idea of what it's like to fly in a Henry Ford tri-motor. Well, there you go. What a beautiful, beautiful display. Wow, that's just stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Souvenir maps that spread before you. You begin to look for familiar landmarks. airport in Indianapolis. At this same time, in every airport along the line,
Unbelievable display. Never had the opportunity to fly in one of these. Kind of wish I would have. Had the opportunity to photograph it on the ground, photograph it as a flyover, photograph an engine start, but never actually flew in it. These displays are really, really well done. This is a 1927 Boeing 40 B2. Little story about Bill Boeing. And again, just being a railroad guy, you gotta love American Railway Express. Man, look at that small door. Good grief. I don't even... Yeah, I couldn't fit through that thing. No way. You know, by each display, the museum has done just a fabulous job at explaining things. They've had just a great job kind of skimming things down. Check out the copy of the Telegraph, and if you've got poor eyes, well, they even had it showing up there on the screen a few moments ago. Just gives a brief story, explanation of how first flight took place. In the background, you hear wind and seagulls and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you do a really, really great job at just making the displays really just top notch. You simply can't have an aviation display of this grandeur and not include these guys. I can only imagine what was going through their minds when this finally took off. Check this out. Try to get not a whole lot of glare, but because it's lit, it resembles the picture that was taken when it went airborne. And it's just a really, really fabulous display. It's a really nice shadow blocks display of Charles Lindbergh. Obviously his plane isn't here, but There is a really cool model, but here's what I really like about it more than anything. They have a cross section, kind of what it would look like and for those of you who know, used a periscope essentially to see, so that he could put more fuel in the front where there would have been windows otherwise. Pretty amazing when you think about it. And of course they, again, with all of the displays, they just tell a little brief history. They got a small section that it looks like they kind of replicated. This is probably the darkest room I've been in, and I'm not sure why. Looks like there's a bunch of lights that should be on, but aren't. Still very, 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 very cool. Another cool exhibit. Probably one of my favorite displays as far as the aviation goes is just the whole circus theme right here. On the big screen, you've actually got some vintage footage. But how cool is that? Very cool display, very, very cool. Well, here we are driving America, and of course, obviously, we've got some serious neon here. What a wonderful collection of neon. If you're into neon, check this out. What a display. I gotta get up close. Look at this beautiful, beautiful Chevy. Back then, just 15 cents. For what it's worth today, I don't think it's worth much more, but hey, that's a different story. I remember a kid growing up seeing that. Same with the A&W. White Castle, yeah. When I was a kid growing up in Chicago, These things were all over the city. Folks, this is a 1903 Ford Model A. The original Model A. Yep, it's a 1903 Model A runabout. This was Henry's start of the alphabet cars. The story of how he came up with an engine. Obviously called the kitchen sink engine for obvious reasons. Now, next to this 1909 Model T Touring, right up there on the top, that's a 1906 Ford Model N runabout. Do you remember my other YouTube video, how the Model A got its name? Well, you can kind of see that this kind of supports how Henry just used letters of the alphabet until finally we're going to go ahead and just call the Model A a Model A. Start all over. So that's why the Model A that we all know and love is not the Model U, which it almost became. Now this 1903 Holzman runabout was a first for its time, but this is the one that I love. Look at that 1906 Thomas Flyer touring car. Just absolutely gorgeous. So steam, gas, electric. They're all here on display. Back around the early 1900s, drivers had lots of different choices. Now there are vehicles here, obviously, other than just Fords. And here's one, for example. This is a 24 Essex coach. Just a really, really pretty car. The one right up there, that's a 1924 Chrysler touring car. And we all know that that's a Model T, but before a Model T was the Model S. And there it is right there. Well, this car isn't it. I find it kind of ironic. It's got a 1930 Ohio plate, which is where my Model A came from. But what I really appreciate about this is when Sharon and I got married, a four-door Phaeton was our limo in 1930. Absolutely love this car. 2 years later, the V8 came out, and here's the 32 Cabriolet. You can see the V8 emblem right there. A game changer for Ford. That's pretty cool. That's actually a replica of a billboard. So check out this display. This is a Texaco fuel delivery truck delivering fuel to this Texaco gas station. I came down here to get parts for my Model A, but these guys were closed for lunch. What's up with that? This was another neat display I thought was pretty cool. Conoco gasoline filling station, 1915. And there it is, right there. Traffic lights of the day. Children's car seats. They weren't always about safety. I don't know about you, but this would be the talk of any campsite. I'd love to have this behind my Model A. Would be so appropriate. Now this locomotive actually ran here at Greenfield Village here in 1929. This was the last time it actually ran. It was used to celebrate the opening of Greenfield Village and Edison's 50th year anniversary of the light bulb. I believe that's the way this read. You can take a look at it there. Freeze the frame if you need to and read up. Very cool. These 440s, you know, during the Civil War era and whatnot, they ran on wood. Now this is standard gauge. I actually got to photograph a 440 narrow gauge wood burner, and that is a rare treat to see. The amount of wood that it takes to fire one of these up is really quite incredible. Also during that era, you can see passenger coaches were quite beautiful. They were very ornate, and this obviously a beautiful coach. Well, how long do you think Bluebird built school buses? Built in 1927, this is Bluebird number 1. This could be, according to the sign, America's oldest surviving school bus. So this is what I call the presidential row. If you look all the way down, these are all different limos. And we're going to take a look at each one, starting with Ronnie Reagan. Now, what's really cool about this particular 1972 Lincoln, and I'll show you the back side of it. There's a quick look at the presidential seal. You're going to see on each one of these, there's a place for Secret Service to stand. Now, what's really kind of cool about this is this actually folds down into the back, I guess, trunk, for lack of a better way of saying it. But that is it. If you look at this picture, I'll get up a little close, you can actually see the Secret Service agent holding on to that. And again, the presidential flag. I'm going to stand back a little bit. Ronnie Reagan's Lincoln. Now this next Lincoln has a sad history to it. If you can see that. Try to maybe get a little bit of light. This is John F. Kennedy's Lincoln. This is actually the car that he was assassinated in. Now, I know the thought that's running through your mind as you take a step back is, I thought it was a convertible. Well, if you look closely, and that's a great question, but if you look closely, this top, it either retract or remove, I'm not really too sure. But you can definitely see that it either retracted or came off. Now, notice that the places here, similar to Ronald Reagan's Lincoln, was a place for the Secret Service agents to both step and hold on to. And again, I kind of look at this and I'm thinking, let's see, what does it say here? Maybe the top does retract? Looks like it was actually rebuilt in 1964 with a permanent armored steel top. So it looks like part of that probably was a convertible. Has a weird feeling to actually look at a car that a president was assassinated in. There's a picture of it with the replacement top, and I'm guessing probably a 1964 photo. Moving down, this is the famous bubble top. And this 1950 Lincoln is Dwight D. Eisenhower's. There's a picture of him there. This was used from 50 to 67. Beautiful, beautiful. You notice too, even back then they have these steps. Doesn't look like there's anything to grab onto, but definitely steps for Secret Service. Let's take a look at the interior, since we can. Very, very cool. Kind of interesting to note that all of these are Lincolns. Now, I don't know if that has something to do with Ford Motor Company. If you haven't figured this out yet, this 1939 Lincoln belonged to FDR. I bet he thought this was a slight upgrade from his Model T or Model A. Now note that the steps and the grab irons in the back of this, but we didn't see it on Eisenhower's. That's kind of interesting. Also notice the police do not pass. Man, this thing is just huge. I can only imagine what that siren will sound like. Check that thing out. Last but not least, we have one more presidential vehicle. Care to take a guess? Well, this was kind of shocking for me to see, but we've got both of the Roosevelts covered here. This one is Teddy Roosevelt's. Kind of guessing there's no place for Secret Service to stand or grab onto. Secret Service might not have even been around back then. Maybe.
Friends, that's going to wrap things up for this video. Hey, remember to give us a like and subscribe. That's super important to us. But more than anything else, be blessed.